And Dean tells Cass to act like he is from Tombstone. And Cass is confused. He's asking if he means the city. And Dean, of course, means the movie, the one with the guns and tuberculosis. I'm your Huckleberry. And with the I'm your Huckleberry, we are going to go into some lore about tombs because that's the name of this episode. And maybe I thought this episode took place in Tombstone. I forgot it took place in a different state, but whatever. So we're going to Tombstone, Arizona.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about a place there called the Birdcage Theatre. And the main source of this was the Birdcage Theatre by Michael Paul Milhaljevic. And the rest are going to be in the show notes. So if you're lucky enough to visit Tombstone, Arizona, you can visit the Birdcage Opera House. Have you been to Tombstone?
I have not.
Okay. I have not been there either. So this gem of the Wild West was once described as the roughest, wildest honky-tonk in the West. It's rumored to have 20 gunfights and 26 murders. There are 140 bullet holes in the walls. Visitors were said to have included infamous Western outlaws such as Wyatt Earp, Doc Holliday, and Bat Masters. And of course, it's said to be haunted as well. They first opened their doors on December 26, 1881. And there are many stories about how it got its name. Birdcage was a popular name for businesses at the time, including one saloon in Galveston, Texas, which is blocks away from the original Birdcage owner, Billy Hutchison's old house. So it's possible that's where he got the idea from. It's also possible that he named it for its small size, as he was trying to fit a full-size theater into a 30-foot wide lot. As far as I know, no woman ever sat in bird cages, as is sometimes said, is the reason.
Got it.
So, as a music person, I think and a venue runner, this will probably make you go, what? The Birdcage was open 24 hours.
No, absolutely not. This is terrible.
Yeah, so it was open 24 hours. Stage shows started at 9 p.m. and continued until 1 a.m. Then the chairs would be cleared away for dancing. Advertisements for the Birdcage when it opened priced general admission at 50 cents and the box at $2.50. And about 160 to 200 people attended per night when things were going well. After the first 7 months, the cost was cut to 25 cents a person, and they also added matinees. When you first walk in, there was a large wooden bar where patrons could pick up drinks before heading into the theater. The stage is 15 feet wide by 15 feet deep and about 5 feet above the main floor. It was lit by a row of gas jets along the front side, which just sounds fucking terrifying. There was also a cellar level with a saloon, maybe gambling tables, and rooms for dressing. If you take a tour of the Birdcage, you will likely hear that these rooms were for prostitution, but no, they were actually nice dressing rooms, not cribs, something which is required for the masquerade balls and the performers sometimes. So the boxes on in the main level-ish are a part of the Birdcage's fame. The sides of the theater were lined with 14 private boxes, each with heavy red velvet drapes that could be drawn for privacy. These were entered via a narrow stairway from behind the front of the bar. Being in the box also would cost you more for drinks. So this was the VIP room area. So in the box, the drinks are going to be 4 bits, which are 50 cents, and there are 2 bits everywhere else. I'm like, how much fucking change did you have to carry around?
It's rude. The people that buy the box, they shouldn't have more expensive drinks.
Yeah, so but you have the money to burn, so you're paying for the luxury of being there, right? And I also compare it to, and I know this was a rowdy honky tonk, and we're gonna go through all the stuff. We're about to tell you how there wasn't any prostitution or sex work going on there, but I think there was, just not on the. I don't think it was that flagrant. Like, I'm pretty sure there was some on the down low, because you had these boxes that had giant red velvet curtains in them, and you have women and you have men, and I'm sure at some point somebody paid for something, because just to me it's like a champagne room.
Yeah.
And this really feels kind of like an early strip club in some ways. Okay. And as I said, so just like sex sometimes happens in a champagne room, it's likely stuff was happening in these balconies, just not blatant sex work like most of the legends state. And here is some logic. Tombstone created ordinances that zoned the legal boundaries for prostitution, and the Birdcage was outside that legal boundary. If a sex worker was caught doing business outside the boundary, she would be removed and often fined. Even when the boundaries were removed, no license for sex work was ever issued to the Birdcage or any of its employees. Tombstone's original recorder's docket, which tracked arrests, charges, and fines for municipal offenses, shows numerous citations for prostitution and licensing infractions throughout the city. However, no such arrests were ever documented at the Birdcage. So either they had greased the wheels of every cop in town for the entire time that it operated, or that just wasn't happening there. Annie Ashley, who was an actress at the Birdcage, said of the working girls, sometimes the women would come to the theater and they spend their money freely like the miners. Another performer said, the honky tonks furnished prostitutes with relief from their professional ordeals. Here they went for forgetfulness and laughter. Their working day was over. They could give full attention to the performance as they sat and cried over a topical ballad or applauded. And one Tombstone resident said, and I really kind of like this quote, there was degrees of respectability among the non-respectable.
Huh. Okay.
And I'm like, yeah, no, I kind of get that. There's rules too, right? Annie also recalled how the women were treated and how they were paid. After the show was over every night, downstairs would be turned into a dance hall. The tables would be cleared away, and we girls would come down to entertain. If the men opened champagne, we got $1 on each bottle. Other drinks, we got 10 cents on the dollar. Earning money there then was exciting to say the least. After the time, we girls got so accustomed to the overhanging excitement that we didn't think anything of it. Yet we remained morally good women and took care of our families. The cowboys treated us like children. A woman, no matter who she was, even a streetwalker, was respected according to the laws of these outlaws. God help anyone who ever made a slurring remark about a girl. Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that was, but that's just interesting. So the female wait staff, who were often the performers, were known as rustlers. Some of the women were actually good, quote unquote, morally upstanding women who were just taking money for the dances and whatnot, and some were just hustling their asses off. Former Birdcage performer Joe Adams noted their occupation was a highly profitable one. A clever singing and dancing girl could draw from $50 to $75 as salary, and commissions from wine sales would frequently double that. But their morals were surprisingly straight. One performer described a method she used to avoid getting wasted. While I sat, I put the bottle in back of me and pour the contents on the floor to drink less and make him buy more. The girls would sometimes order tea and whiskey glasses to fool him. I feel like these are tricks that have been going on at cocktail bars and again at strip clubs since the dawn of time. Oh, you want to buy me a drink? Sure. And then here's one going over my shoulder as I get you are intoxicated, so you buy more dances from me. They're literally buying dances. This is okay. So being a rustler could make things awkward if you were married, as 22% of them were.
Oh.
One performer recalled his wife didn't feel comfortable selling drinks, and he told her just to stick to the dressing room. The manager noted this and told the husband that his wife needed to hustle and get around more. And when she only earned a few dollars in commissions over a week, she was fired. Yep. So your relationship could also get really strained. This is another quote. So frequently the husbands would be singing or doing a comedy scene while looking on at their wives sitting on the laps of love-struck minors. The girls, alert and mindful of their cues, would excuse themselves to the stage, whereupon the minors in adjoining boxes would say, "Look at Brown, he's been sitting with an actress." And the fortunate minor would throw out his chest if he'd had his way with Diana, goddess of the hunt. Put your titties away. So, the variety show featured skits, singers, comedians, and of course, dancers. The can-can was a favorite of the crowd, although I bet the least favorite of the dancers because it takes so much endurance to do the goddamn can-can. It's so much. It's so fun for the first 3 or 4 kicks, and then it's, nope, why did I start this?
It's intense.
It's intense. So some nights the club with their masquerade balls, complete with the cross-dressing entertainers David Waters and Will Curlew. The mask would be raised at midnight, with 15 minutes notice given for those who wanted to remain anonymous. There is a legend that there was a poker game at the Birdcage which ran for 8 years and that $10 million passed over the table. The Birdcage never had a license for gambling, and it's unlikely that a game lasted that long. Additionally, all 5 owners of the Birdcage left their time with the business broke as hell. And also the press, which would be like, they would cover card games, right? Because that's what was going on in Tombstone. And if there had been one where all this money was going on, they would have reported on it, and they never did. And also, none of the Birdcage advertisements, which were pretty extensive, said anything about gambling, which if that was going on, they probably would have said it. Now, on to the 20 murders. I'm not sure how many murders there actually were. There was definitely some violence, but it seems like it was typical drunken bar violence. The local Epitaph newspaper reported on a fight between waiters that took place in July of 1882. And so one of them was a black guy and the other one was a Frenchman, and they got into a row about midnight and they were talking about their work and they started to plug each other in good shape, but they were gobbled up by officers Coyle and Holmes before they could do any damage. They were arrested, subsequently released on bonds, and they had a hearing. But this is just interesting because it shows that the Birdcage also hired men, which a lot of places said it was all female. It was not an all-female staff. And they had at least one person of color there, which for the Wild West seems pretty progressive. So there was another fight at the Birdcage in September of 1882 when a John Doe punched Dick Roberts in the eye. I just wanted to say Dick Roberts. But this was also during a benefit for a performer who was a mother of two who was chronically ill. So everyone was like, you asshole, why are you getting a fight during this? You don't get to turn a fight during a benefit, you dicks. So the John Doe got hauled off. He had to pay a fine. So unscrupulous people did hang out at the Birdcage. One night, also in February of 1882, 4 members of a traveling troupe went to the Birdcage, where they met a man who offered to sell them things he had allegedly stole from a Native American he killed. Now, why they wanted these things, I do not understand. But for some reason, it seemed like something they wanted. They followed the guy out of the theater, and 1 block away, they were ambushed by masked men. They were struck over the head and robbed of their watches and other valuables. One of the men was shot, and his wound required him to take his meals in a standing position. The attackers were never caught. All right. So the first bullet hole at the Birdcage, this happened a month before the official opening. A Luke Rickabaugh got into a fight on the street, and he was hit in the head with a revolver, and that discharged upon the impact, striking the awning post. The first murder at the Birdcage. Before the Birdcage was built on the lot, the lot was owned by miners. Those miners lived in a frame cabin, and they appeared to have claimed the land by simply saying, this land is mine, which is what people just did in the old West times. This is my land. So Billy Hutchison then paid them $600 for this claim. Morgan Earp and Fred Dodge were said to be living in the cabin in 1880 when Curly Bill Brocious, who was mentioned in this episode, shot and killed Marshall Fred White. The cabin would burn to the ground in 1881, and the fire may have inspired the Birdcage's fireproof adobe construction. The first death at the Birdcage actually happened the morning after opening night when their stage manager, Harry Lorraine, died. He was only in his 30s, and the cause of his death was unconfirmed, but they think that he got sick on the trip from San Francisco to Tombstone.
Case.
Yeah. So, like I said, the building is said to be very haunted.
Right.
The Great Hall has the most, and that's just the big main theater, has the most paranormal activity, including smells of cigar smoke and whiskey. There are sounds of singing, laughing, talking, and gambling, like the shuffling of cards and rolling of dice, and that can be heard when there's nobody else around. There are also lots of apparitions of people in old-fashioned clothes, including a stagehand and black and white striped pants with a clipboard. I appreciate a ghost who takes a clipboard to the afterlife. Like, we gotta take the organization itself. We're good. In one story, $100 poker chip was found on a poker table in the basement. It was put in a safe until an expert can validate it. However, when they opened the safe, the chip was gone, and it was later found in a desk drawer. Yep. So the Ghost City tours have a bunch of apparitions they claim that are there, and you can go look at their website, and you go to ghostcitytours.com, and I was going to go through them, but they're just all problematic to me. Because it's like the lady in white, Margarita, a prostitute murdered by a jealous client, crib number 2 in her white negligee, because of course she's in a white gown. And it was like she sings sad Spanish songs from her cage. And this is very problematic, but I can't believe they put this in here. Male visitors sometimes feel invisible hands caressing their faces while hearing her whisper prices in Spanish. Cinco. What the fuck? You made that, like, someone made that up, and I'm sorry. It's wrong. But anyway, so they do talk one of the ghosts, which is a wrong thing. They see there's a ghost called Black Mariah, but really what there is, what I think is really cool is there is a hearse Cadillac in the theater called the Black Mariah, and it's trans in 24 karat gold and silver. It took all but 6 of the Tombstone residents to Hill Graveyard, and it was said that it had a cowboy for breakfast every day, and it's valued by the Ford Museum at over $2 million.
No shit. That's cool.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. So I did want to dig into the performers, but we don't have time. So there's going to be a more lore. So look for that. And that's going to include stuff about the human fly, the flying nymph, and the murder of blonde Molly. So really exciting things. Look forward to there. So the Birdcage is, I just thought it was a fun place in Tombstone to get old West haunting things going on. I'm not going to say like I was disappointed to learn that it wasn't actually I've said it before, hauntings always sound better if you include working girls. It always sounds like it's gonna be a better haunting and people are gonna be more interested in it. So I can understand why the people who are running these businesses latch on to those legends to say that those things were happening in the theater. This is where we get to more lore. I think it was interesting enough that you didn't have to put in the legend. You didn't have to say that it was full of prostitutes, right? Whatever. I don't know. But still, you can go, you can do ghost hunts there, and you can do ghost hunts all over Tombstone. So, so Old West stuff. All right.